Okay, for our underwater adventure, this is what I used, and you can of course modify given what you have at home. I used 3 papers like what you might have in your printer at home, scissors, I used a Sharpie. If you don't have one, that's okay, but I love Sharpies, so I have a lot. Glue, paper towel, and I'll show you why in a minute. A paintbrush and water, markers, and crayons. So that is what I used to make the picture. Okay, the first thing you want to do is have your cat join you on the table. Sparkles, what are you doing? We are gonna make, first step, the water background. Now, you may have watercolors at home, and if you do, you can use them. I didn't really want to spend a lot of time for me painting the water background, and I thought, well, what would happen if we used markers? And mine all just happen to be washable. So I thought, what would happen if we used markers for our water? So don't worry about the cattail. I'm trying to do this one-handed. I'm gonna just make some watery waves. And what I did too was put paper towel down because we're gonna use our water. Oh, I hear it starting to rain. It's gonna be a rainy day today. Okay, so we're doing our waves just kind of all over the place. Okay, then gotta put those marker lids back on. You guys know that. We don't want our markers to dry out. Okay. Oh my gosh, Sparkle's tail is driving me crazy. Now I'm gonna take just plain water, and I am going to start to paint with water all over my paper. And what that does is, some of you guys might already know this, it kind of wakes up the marker ink and it makes it easy to kind of spread around. And what you'll see too as it dries is the marker lines kind of spread. So that kind of gives a really cool effect with not a lot of, you know, paint and messiness. Okay. Oh my gosh, y'all. Sparkles. I guess this is what happens when you're working at home. Do you guys have pets that are always wanting to be with you right now while you're doing your work? That's how our cats have been. They're always laying on our stuff. All right, Sparkles. This is water. I don't know if you want it. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside now. I'm gonna leave it on the paper towel. And I think I'm gonna move this to the kitchen counter and let it start to dry. Got it, Sparkles? Okay. So, to make the rocks for our ocean scene or our fish tank scene, I've come outside. You guys remember this from the art room? Well, I brought it home. It looks like it's gonna need some water. Anyway, you're gonna take one of your papers and put it on your driveway or a sidewalk and get some crayons. I just chose 2 colors out of my bin, and I am gonna just scribble all over. Okay, I'm gonna use some brown, and I'm gonna use some purple. Kind of eats up your crayon, so don't use a pretty one. If you have like a nice new crayon and you love new crayons, I would not use it for this. But you see how it's getting the texture of the driveway? That's gonna help our rocks kind of look like real rocks. All right, that looks pretty good. Now we're gonna take this back inside and I'm gonna show you what to do with it. Okay, we have our water painted and it's drying. We just went outside and we scribbled on our paper. This part's kind of fun. You're gonna take your paper and you're gonna just crumple it up, okay? This is gonna add even more texture. If you can do this outside, do it, because I noticed that the crayon is kind of breaking up and it's falling down on my table. It's raining outside right now, so I can't go outside, but either do it on your table and just know you're gonna have to kind of clean up after this part. It's not like messy. Well, maybe it is a little messy. Do it over the sink, over the trash can, or just do it outside. Okay, so now we have our rocks ready. And I'm going to take this paper and I'm gonna rip it because we have to make the rocks for our tank. So there we go. I'm just gonna rip these guys into whatever happens, whatever comes out is what I'm gonna use, okay? You can kind of control how you want this to be. I don't want to use scissors. I don't want to because I want it to look jaggedy, like either the ocean floor if you're doing the ocean, or just kind of rocky if you're doing a fish tank. It's really up to you, okay? So I've ripped up every part of my paper that has my scribbled texture on there. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to what's in our tank. Okay, so I'm now on the third piece of paper. Remember we talked about using 3 papers. One was for our background, one we used for the texture for our rocks, and the third, do you like I'm using my cans because everybody's using canned food right now? The third paper is what I'm gonna use to draw my fish tank ocean stuff on, and then I'm gonna cut it out. So I do know that I want some seaweed. So I'm gonna draw my seaweed. I kind of start at the bottom of the page and I do squiggles. Maybe I want some smaller seaweed. The good thing is I'm gonna cut everything out of this and then glue it onto my background so I can draw anywhere I want on here and not worry. I'm not drawing my picture, I'm drawing my stuff. Now, if you want to draw Mr. Pickles, he's real easy. Watch. I'm gonna draw kind of an oval, but I'm gonna go in a little bit. So he's like an oval, like a jelly bean or like a pickle. My Mr. Pickle has his eyes and he has on his scuba gear mask. All right. And he's got his what is this thing called? The air deal. Sorry guys, I don't know my scuba stuff. All right. And because he's got clothes on, you know, he's got to have his scuba outfit on. I'm going to do like that because I know I'm going to color this in black. But you know, pickles have their little bumps, so we still have to give them some bumps. And that's it. Now I went ahead and on my drawing, when I did this the first time, I drew his legs in and then I drew his little flippers, so they're kind of like rainbows, and then they do like that. I realized then, well, that's gonna be hard to cut this line out, right? So I thought, well, that's okay. I'm gonna color in my Mr. Pickle. I'm gonna color in his flippers, and I'll glue those onto my background. And then I just came back and I drew his legs in, right? Like, why make it harder than it has to be? So that's what I did. His body is cut out and his flippers are cut out. And then of course his help sign, because you know, Moonteller's about to attack him. If you want to do Mr. Radish, of course, you could draw, oh my gosh, you could even draw Mr. Radish. He's kind of like a heart, but not. And then he has his, yeah, you could draw him as a shark. Okay. There's his eyes. Now the thing that makes Mr. Radish look mean are the eyebrows. Boom. Instant meanness. Maybe I'm gonna give him, he's gonna be scuba diving as well. So So he's got his scuba gear on too. And I'm just gonna do 2 little flippers here. Cut those out with him. And then maybe some fish. Ooh, maybe they're sword fighting. Maybe they're sword fighting. I'll draw those later. Okay. We'll draw some fish. Okay. And then we gotta color it all in. Something that we talk about in school is when you're cutting, the hand that's holding your paper is the one that's moving the paper around so that you can cut into all of those little curvy spots. My hand that's holding the scissors is just cutting. That's all it's doing. This hand is doing kind of like all of the work. Moving my paper around. I can't see. Okay, so that is a good tip to remember. All right, I'm gonna finish cutting everything else out. And also see how it doesn't matter that I colored out of my lines, because we're cutting all of this away. No big deal. Okay, keep cutting your stuff out. You're doing a good job.